All right. Do you want to kick it off? Are you ready?
All set.
Perfect. Well, welcome again. Again, it's great to see some familiar names. I am Emily Stone. I'm the manager of curriculum and professional development and coaching at Housman Institute. And it's great to be here with you today to discuss this very, very important topic. So Donna, why don't you introduce yourself and kick us off?
Thanks, Em. I'm delighted to be here with you all. And as Em just indicated, we're going to be talking about a subject that touches everybody's hearts and profession, both professionally, obviously, and personally. So let me just tell you just a little bit about myself. I've been in the field forever. I started out as a clinical psychologist working with children and adolescents who are struggling with depression, anxiety, suicide, trauma, and realized at the time that one of the common threads running through everybody's struggles was that of having a real difficult time managing intense emotions. And I thought at that time, how better it would be if we could really start from the beginning, from earliest on, when children are really having the opportunity to learn and begin to understand more about their emotions so that they develop the skills necessary to be able to deal with intense emotions, both positive and negative. And at that point, I started a child development center, which really was focused on emotional foundations of learning and cognition. And from there, we had the opportunity to really develop and research and practice Excel, which we will be talking about a little bit more today, in terms of how it really focuses on the emotional, cognitive, and social early learning of children. But what is equally important in understanding, and which really ties into our talk this afternoon, is the importance of the significant socializer, the caregiver, the educator, the parent, and their role in helping to develop the foundation of the child's personality, their character, and how they manage and deal in life. And so with that, I'm going to quickly kind of go into exactly what we're all experiencing today, which is that of children's developmental delays, mental health concerns, dysregulated behaviors, too many meltdowns to mention. And again, we're not just talking about children, we're also talking about the people that are with children as well, in terms of the stress and anxiety that is happening today and what we're faced with and needing to really manage and deal with in the best possible ways. So let's take a look at this scene right now.
We'll do a little volume warning for this one, but I'm sure this is something you'll find familiar.
Okay, so this is one little example of what all of you, I'm sure, are facing day in and day out. But even before the pandemic, we've been seeing dramatic rise in children's stress, anxiety, and dysregulated behaviors. However, over the past several years, it's been exacerbated. Young children have lived most of their lives in times of disruption, uncertainty, and unpredictability. The American Academy of Pediatrics, of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the Children's Hospital Association, I can go on and on, the U.S. Surgeon General's report, have all declared a national state of emergency in children's mental health. We don't know yet the long-term effects, but we do know what we're seeing day in and day out in our classrooms and schools each and every day. We also know that the first 1,000 days of a child's development are critical for brain development. In the first few years of a child's life, 1 million new neural connections are forming every second. Just think about that for a second. There is a wealth of wiring waiting to be shaped and informed by daily experiences. Yet over the past 3 years, all of that is happening again amidst disruption, anxiety, stress, uncertainty. And it's really taken a toll on children's mental health, learning, and social interactions. And kids are facing social, emotional, and cognitive delays. They're more aggressive, hyperactive, more oppositional behaviors. Some are exhibiting more shy, withdrawn behaviors. We've been seeing lower scores on assessments of language, problem solving, math, reading. And it's also showing us that there's been a tremendous loss in social emotional skills and learning. Children without the critical social emotional learning opportunities are really ill-equipped to deal with the age-appropriate developmental tasks. We see that children are struggling with lining up. They're struggling with engaging just in appropriate ways of back and forth interactions with their friends across their play space. And they're lacking the skills to express and cope with their emotions. This is why now, more than ever, we need a solution, one that supports children, the educator, the parents, and the leaders. And that solution is learning how to deal with and manage big emotions, developing the skills of emotional intelligence, the ability to be aware of, understand, effectively deal, and express one's own emotions and those of others. So for a moment, let's just take a step back and see what we mean when we're talking about emotional intelligence with young children. And for clarity, these are the building blocks, if you will, of emotional intelligence. And on the left side of this graph, what we see is that of emotion knowledge. And emotion knowledge is made up of 2 quadrants. The first quadrant is that of being able to recognize, label, and identify what we're feeling. The second part is that of understanding, and understanding the ability to differentiate between and among emotions accurately and be able to connect them with a cause. What is causing me to feel this way? So this is all about knowledge, gaining knowledge about our emotions. Whereas on the right side of the graph, we're really talking about emotion regulation. How do we manage the expression, which is the third quadrant, the expression of both, again, positive and negative, whether it's verbal through gestures, or how to regulate the intensity of the emotions. The ability to manage heightened emotions, again, both positive and negative. And it is so critical that the adults understand these 4 quadrants for themselves, because we typically often just focus on the child, but it is so important to keep in mind that the adults really must do this first so that they can really instruct, model, guide, and respond accurately and appropriately to the children that they're working with. So how does this really relate to children's learning? Well, we also know that when the brain is overwhelmed by dysregulated emotion, it can't learn. The brain loves predictability. And there is a critical link between emotions and cognition, learning. We've all been there in the classrooms again, in the throes of chaos, where heightened emotions stop everything in its tracks, especially learning. When our brains are cluttered with heightened emotions and unmanaged stress and anxiety, thinking is impaired. And unmanaged emotions hijack our ability to focus, to attend, take information, grasp new concepts. What does this sound like? These are all executive function skills necessary for learning. Having the skills to be aware of, manage, and regulate our emotions and effectively deal with the stresses and anxiety that we are confronted with on a regular basis is foundational for learning. So how do we accomplish this so that we can access the executive functioning skills necessary to learn? Well, the answer is in self-regulation. So what is this? Well, self-regulation is really the ability to manage and regulate our thinking, our behavior, and our feelings, to be able to be aware of, manage, and regulate emotions to deal effectively with stress and anxiety, which is, again, necessary so that we can focus, problem solve, and learn. Neuroscience describes the development of self-regulation as the growth of executive function skills. Self-regulation, emotional intelligence, and executive function are all interrelated. Because you know what happens when the skills of self-regulation are not present: dysregulated behavior, acting out, aggressive actions, bullying, and so many meltdown moments. It can be infectious, impacting and disrupting the entire classroom. And before you know it, the entire room is full of meltdown moments, and possibly including the educator themselves as well. So how do we change the course and provide children and ourselves with the skills of self-regulation? Because at the heart of these skills are relationships. Children need positive, supportive, and responsive relationships in the earliest years, because children develop within the context of relationships. We all know the importance of responsive relationships, which are optimal for optimal development and learning. But let's dive into it a little bit further. Children, as we know, are emotional detectives. They are constantly observing and picking up and tuning in and absorbing the emotions of the key people around them in their lives. And as I said a moment ago, given that they develop in the context of relationships with these significant adults, it's so important for them to be aware of the important role they play in terms of being able to be empathic and nurturing and supportive. And the children's ability to develop the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence starts with how we engage and respond and interact with them. So Emily, can you provide an example of what this looked like before and after your training?
Sure. So I should have probably said this at the beginning, but I actually started with Housman Institute 7 years ago now as a teacher at the lab school that Dr. Housman founded. So before my training in the 4 quadrants, which really required digging deep, which we'll talk about more later as well, there was a very clear lack of patience from my side. You know, we all have those learned behaviors from our own childhoods and our environments and our parents that impact how we react and respond to heightened emotions, to stress, to children experiencing stressful situations and social challenges. And what that looked like for me, at least, was I would ignore it, I would bottle it, push it down until one tiny thing would happen and I would lose my patience. And this was because I wasn't addressing those emotions. And so I didn't have brain space to be able to find those more successful strategies, as Donna, you were saying earlier. And so in the classroom, I was actually, I was modeling the wrong thing for children. They're internalizing my body language, my tone of voice, my facial expressions, which all lended to the fact that I was stressed and I was losing my patience. And those are the reactions then that they're repeating in social interactions with their peers, whether it's their friends, other teachers, siblings, family members. And it's a big difference because it really, we always say when a child is up here, you meet them down here, you don't meet them up here, or else you're just getting that piling effect. And now when I compare that to after my years of training with the Excel program, I was really able to work to unlearn those learned behaviors, which takes a lot of time. And Donna, this is one thing that you mentioned about when you introduced yourself, the importance of really shaping a trajectory of how the child is able to manage their emotions and their emotional intelligence from the start so that they don't need to unlearn and relearn, which takes so much more time. But really learning how to regulate my own emotions from stress and anxiety, identify things that trigger my stress and anxiety, be able to pause in the heat of the moment rather than feel like I need to keep going and take a breath, take a step back, even involving children in that process to really calm them down too, really allowed me to actually be responsive in my relationships and interactions with them to be more empathetic and understanding to and with children, which I very quickly noticed was then, promoted between other children in their own interactions.
Right. And that is so important because as you spoke about, when a child is up here emotionally, way up high in terms of being dysregulated, the last thing we want to do, and so often is natural, is to kind of meet them up there because the person is, really trying to address what's going on without recognizing that the tone of voice is so important in helping to calm the child. So you want really the child to meet you where you are in terms of your tone of voice being calm, being focused, being supportive. And then that helps bring the child from a very elevated state of anxiety more down to meet you where you're more calm and focused. And that's when you can really engage. And the child is then attending.
Absolutely. And also, when you are responding up here with children, they're also experiencing an emotion from whatever it may be. It might be stress, it might be a social challenge they're experiencing. And by meeting them up here, they're likely to internalize my reaction or the educator's reaction as being something to do with them as a person, that they did something wrong, which isn't nurturing or responsive and doesn't help them develop those coping skills and emotion management skills.
So promoting self-regulation in the child as a solution is so important. And it starts with the educator, with the key socializer. And again, the key socializer as an educator is critical, but we also want to be sensitive to the fact that the parent is the first teacher for a child, and parents' role is also so important. And we will get into that later as well. Educators' emotion, your emotions really matter. They are so important. The stress and anxiety resulting in dysregulation that children are experiencing not only, again, takes a toll on the child's mental health, but also on the mental health of the teacher, of the educator, impacting their ability to teach and also the child's ability to learn. Educators need to be able to regulate their own feelings before they can really help the child develop self-regulation. The ability to manage our own emotions not only supports children who learn through observation and how we model, guide, and respond to them, but is also so important to our own mental health, our own well-being, professionally and personally, our relationships, and our success in our careers.
And again, I think this really goes back to our own emotional fingerprints that we all have, both good and bad, as I mentioned previously, from our early experiences that do influence and impact our behaviors with and to others. When we experience those intense emotions and experiences, we often react in ways that we learned, again, when we were children, whether that was shutting down, walking away, bottling it up until you explode. Oftentimes from our own, key socializers, our parents and our early teachers. But none of these ways are really effective or helpful in regulating our emotions or resolving the problem or in helping children to do the same. So educators and school leaders really need the support and the training in order to learn the effective ways to manage those emotions and deal with challenges, which, translates so much beyond the classroom. It translates to a child's growth and development, and also to our personal lives in addition to our professional lives.
And another way to think about it is think about the oxygen mask rule. That it is so important that before we can promote these skills in the children or foster regulation in children's daily experiences, their routines, their learning, the emotional situations that they're struggling with, we need to really have developed that again within ourselves first, not just so that we can be a really effective, responsive person in relating to children, but also in terms of our own well-being and what we need for ourselves, again, both personally and professionally. Because what happens within responsive relationships, if they're not in place, the educator is then unable to manage their own emotions and their own stress in terms of really being able to be effective in their interactions with children. And without the responsive relationship, the children are less able to deal with the heightened emotion, cope in the face of adversity, trauma, or learn in terms of their inability to really deal with the impact of the traumatic experiences. Now, let's talk a moment about trauma, because while trauma used to be thought of as resulting from a significant defined event, a singular significant defined event, research over the last several decades in child development has shown that any major change or disruption can be traumatic. And adding to the impact from stress over the past several years, the loss, the disruption, social systems being pulled away has resulted in trauma. And without the mitigating factors to help children deal with these heightened emotions, turns into toxic stress. And without responsive relationships, children's stress hormone, cortisol levels remain very elevated, impacting healthy brain development and the body's ability to regulate stress. It results in difficulties with key, again, executive functioning skills, learning, behavioral issues, mental health, and health issues long into adulthood. And the recent revised policy issued by the American Academy of Pediatrics has endorsed a paradigm shift toward the importance of responsive relationships, not just as a buffer for childhood adversity and trauma, but also to promote resilience in the future. There is a foundational need for responsive relationships to support children's development of self-regulation from the earliest years, and self-regulation develops as an outgrowth of co-regulation, co being the operative word here. So what is co-regulation? Co-regulation involves responsive interactions by the significant caregivers through support, modeling, guidance, and empathic responses to the adults, both in and out of the heat of the moment situations. Children begin to internalize and develop self-control, shaping their own understanding, expression, and regulation of their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors, which is paving the way for self-regulation. We can look at a hug, some deep breathing, singing calming songs to help the child calm their bodies and their minds as an example of co-regulation. Being responsive and sensitive to the emotions of the child, providing safe and supportive environment, and helping them learn to label emotion, understand cause and effect, express emotions in constructive ways, and begin to manage and regulate big feelings is also subsumed within responsive relating in regard to children. So when do we really need to start supporting children with the development of self-regulation through co-regulation? From the beginning. Children are born, as we know, with emotion as their first universal language, and they're born ready to learn. We start building the infrastructure of emotional intelligence to support children's mental health and well-being from birth. The brain is most malleable in the earliest years, setting the patterning for the brain for life. And early development of children's ability to regulate is strengthened from our own support. Responses to children's heightened emotions, our calm tone of voice, gentle and soothing touch, eye contact, all helps a child feel calm, seen, and safe. And it's much easier to prevent than repair. And when we support children with co-regulation through responsive relating, we support the development of coping skills, emotional management from the very beginning, from the start. By being proactive with responsive interactions, we can anticipate and predict children's needs, providing emotional and physical support, and modifying children's environments to decrease stress and anxiety. All of this provides a buffer against adversity and toxic stress. And with our support, children as young as infants can take their first baby steps from co-regulation towards self-regulation. Now, it's important to also understand that although babies are born with a propensity to develop self-regulation, they need our help in developing the skills of self-regulation. So through co-regulation, children begin to take ownership of their ability to regulate, to be soothed, to be able to take deep breaths, to understand what caused their feelings and that they're there for a reason, and to find words to express them, to begin to be able to understand what can help them feel better. And slowly but surely, children require less hands-on guidance in co-regulation and become more self-regulated. Co-regulation leads to children's internalization of these skills, and children develop self-control. Children understand that everyone has emotions, and all emotions are normal, they're natural and necessary. And it's what we do with these emotions that really matter. And as co-regulation becomes self-regulation, children learn how to constructively express emotions and manage the intensity of them, leading them to develop agency and control during dysregulated moments and in the heat of the moment. Learning how to constructively express emotions and manage the intensity of them, developing agency and control, again, during dysregulated emotions, which is so important and different from learning about it, for example, during a circle time when they are very regulated typically. In the heat of the moment, in the throes of a conflict, is another opportune time to help children begin to learn how to self-regulate. So let's take a look at the path from co-regulation to self-regulation with Excel.
Absolutely. And really, everything that Donna just discussed is what our programs train educators and school leaders to be able to do, is to really understand these skills, again, for themselves first, so that they do have an understanding of the developmental milestones and needs of children and how to nurture them in an individual approach. Every child is different, so it takes some adjusting, of course, some trial and error, but regardless, being able to support these skills in children is so, so important. And they really, again, it requires an understanding of how these competencies take root and really blossom with children, as well as with educators. And so our programming really does promote, again, and teaches the development of self-regulation through co-regulation by training the educator on the relational-based practices that are embedded with emotional, cognitive, and social early learning experiences. And I say experiences because, as Donna's saying, it's not just in the context of curriculum. It's not just in the context of the heat of the moment, but really designed to be more of a shift where it's incorporated into every aspect of daily life in the classroom and at school, and then brought into at home between the relationship between the educator, the parent, and the child as that support network. So just as an example, helping a child in the midst of a meltdown moment using co-regulation based on this knowledge is really helping to calm them down, focusing on their dysregulated state and meeting them, again, as we said, at a more regulated one. Guiding deep breathing, finding physical tools and visual aids, using physical touch if appropriate and desired by the child, but mostly being attuned to their needs and their reactions and what is working or not working for them, and providing that support and reassurance that you are there and you're going to help them. And then over time, as Donna's been saying, children really internalize this messaging. And then it comes from doing it for them to guiding them. Oh, will you find a calm down bottle? Or do you want to look at your family photo or take 3 deep breaths? And they begin to be the choice maker in how they want to calm down and gain autonomy over their ability to regulate. Even teaching children the word space, giving them, again, that ownership of this is what I need in this moment, and I know what I need, and being able to honor that as an educator and caregiver. creating safe spaces, again, is so important for this. So having a cozy corner in the classroom or a regulation station, there's so many names for it, but giving a space dedicated for children where they know that that space is safe for them. It's never a timeout. It's always their choice. Do you need space away to take a break and take some deep breaths and then come back when you're ready? So again, they're in control and they're making that choice for them. And we really work with children to, calm their mind and body first, because again, we cannot talk about what they're feeling, what caused it, find solutions if they're dysregulated, and then work to help them share or identify that feeling. What are you feeling right now? I noticed that you have tears in your eyes and you have a frown. Then helping them connect to a cause. What caused you to feel that way? What made you feel angry? And then help them to brainstorm solutions to help them feel better. And we always emphasize this. It's really key. It's not always about what's going to make you feel happy, because as adults too, that's not realistic. It's what will help you feel less angry, what will help you feel less sad, what will help you feel better in this moment. Even if, a child says a solution, you do it together and it doesn't work, then revisit it. We can find something else that works, but coming to that resolve is so important, and revisiting those feelings are so important to make sure that the child really does feel better. And again, this can take time, but this is the responsive interactions and relationships that are really needed to support children's development of these skills. So we are going to show now another video. And this is going to completely contrast the first video that we showed, which again, really highlights what's going on in schools and in classrooms right now. And this was actually a video that you're going to see with one of our tools in our educator and school leader training program. And it is going to be me working with children in my classroom back in the day. And these children just turned 3 years old. But I do just want to show you what is possible when you really are nurturing these skills in children and in educators with Excel from the earliest ages as the solution.
Emily, do you just want to set the stage in terms of what happened right before they went to the peace table?
Sure.
I mean, in terms of their dysregulated state.
Yeah, absolutely. So this group that you're about to see is a group of three-year-olds, and they are best friends, have a very brotherly relationship. But with that comes a lot of social dynamics, a lot of you can't do that. And so they were experiencing a social problem related to play. And so I pulled them into our Make Peace table, which is our problem solving tool for children that is guided by the teacher. And eventually children learn how to do it themselves, actually. And you'll see that as well. But this went from a very, very dysregulated moment. And once I was able to calm them down, brought them to the table so they can discuss. And we'll show you that right now.
I was trying to go back to the house.
Okay, so it sounds like you wanted to play with them. So they said that you couldn't put your mice in there.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel, Zachary? Sad. Okay, did it make you feel a little bit sad or a lot sad? So it made you feel upset that they told you that you couldn't play with your mice in there. And Landon and Alex, how did it make you feel when Zachary was throwing blocks and animals into your tower? Angry. Okay, so can you find the angry Shahimi and put it on the feelings thermometer? Were you feeling a little angry or a lot angry? A lot angry. Landon, is that how you were feeling also? Okay, so Zachary, did you understand that they didn't want those animals in their tower and it was making them feel angry? Okay, so my friends, how can we think of a way to solve this problem so that Zachary feels less upset and that Landon and Alex feel less angry?
We can put the animals we want to put in our boat.
In your boat, but maybe Zachary doesn't know what animals you want in your boat. Did you tell Zachary what animals you want in the boat? Why don't you tell him what animals you want in the boat?
We put bears and dinosaurs and mice inside.
So you do need mice inside. But Zachary said that he was trying to put mice inside. So are we now agreeing that Zachary can put his mice inside? Okay, Alex, do you agree that Zachary can put his mice inside? Zachary, does that solve the problem for you? Take your hand out of your mouth, please, so we can hear your words, because we want to understand you. Would it make you feel less upset if your mice can go in the boat? All right, so how are we feeling now, my friend? Zachary, how are you feeling now that your mice can go in the boat?
I'm feeling happy.
This is excited. Are you feeling happy or excited? You're feeling excited? And Landon and Alex, how are you feeling now that we've solved the problem? Happy? Okay, so you can take the happy Shahimi. A little happy or a lot happy? Okay, so why don't we take away the angry Shahimi and switch it from the happy? Okay. Now, do you want to seal it with a high five, Zachary? Should we do the high five? Okay, be careful with our high five. We're going to do a 3-person high five. Ready? All right. And high five, Alex. All right. All right, so we're going to let Zachary put the mice in the boat. That's the solution. All right. Good job, my friends.
So as you can see from that video, I really was scaffolding those steps for children. Again, these children had pretty much just turned 3, which is, we introduced this tool, and this is a much older adaptation of the tool. Again, this was 7 years ago, probably. But with children, we introduced to around 2.5. And so these children have been practicing a little bit, but I'm still very much scaffolding those steps for them to really help them emphasize the listening component, sharing what you're feeling, but also not trying to direct the solution. So really still making sure to emphasize, I want to hear to understand what you want, making sure that that solution actually worked for both parties. Well, 3 in this situation, which definitely made it more complicated. But again, really trying to understand the emotional experiences of each child and help them understand those of one another. And again, really giving them the agency to share what they're feeling and to share what happened that made them feel that way in the development of not only, compromise and negotiation, skills that we as adults even struggle with a lot of the time, but really develop empathy and pro-social skills in addition to being able to regulate, come to a resolution, and move on with the day and move on with that solution.
And what it also helps the child understand is that when they see that initially they were angry or frustrated, whatever the emotion may have been, and they were way up here, at the high end of the thermometer that measures intensity, that at the end, after they were able to come up with ideas and a solution to the problem, they saw not only experienced in terms of their feeling, that the feeling changed and it switched to excitement or happiness for these particular children. And then they switched out that feeling. They saw that they were instrumental in being able to help change how they were feeling. And that is one of the goals, is helping the child, again, develop agency and control, and that they are able to find ways to help change the feeling that they're having and not having to wait for somebody on the outside to tell them, do this or do that, where it is the outside that's controlling versus helping children to develop internal self-control, which is really the goal.
Absolutely. And even for teachers, it seems a lot of the times like, oh, this takes so much time, this takes so much energy. And so I think a lot of the time for teachers who don't have the training or experience, it feels like, let's just try to move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. But what happens is that those feelings aren't dealt with, first of all. And so that resolve isn't possible. But also, as you saw from that video, that is an instrumental amount of learning that those children are getting from digging into that moment. It's really turning those social problems into learning opportunities for the most important skills that then allow them to learn in curriculum, to help them learn, okay, let's, learn about math, let's learn about physics, which we'll show later. And that is so, so key. And at least for it made my life easier as a teacher because I could move on as well. And know that I was really helping them again through those responsive interactions to really develop these skills that are so important.
Exactly. And what this is doing in terms of the scaffolding, the various steps, is that the first step is in calming the body. And oftentimes people think that breathing, that's going to do it. That's what's going to really be the answer to self-regulation. Well, it's an important component of it, and it's the first step so that children then are available to be able to hear, listen, and begin to solve problems and resolve conflicts. And it's those steps that are equally important in the process of creating skills in negotiation and compromise, being able to understand perspective of the other person in the whole process, empathy. All of this is critical in marrying emotion with cognition. So why is this so? Why does this matter? Because as we said earlier, when the brain is overwhelmed with dysregulated emotion, it can't learn. And as we know that when a child is preoccupied with big feelings, stress, anxiety, they aren't able to focus, attend, or absorb information. Again, these are the executive function skills necessary for learning. And when children have less developed emotional competence and self-regulation, the skills are at increased risk. With the lack of these skills, the child is at increased risk for low academic achievement and school dropout, social issues and peer rejection, and emotional and behavioral issues and low self-esteem. However, children who can regulate intense feelings are more likely to access executive function skills, all of the different skills that I've mentioned many times during this talk so far, the focusing, attending, listening, problem solving, persisting in the face of frustration, which is a challenging one, and being able to understand the perspectives and experiences of the other and act with empathy, manage and cope with feelings from the stress and anxiety. And this all comes together in critical skills in helping to close the achievement gap. Now, there have been many studies, I'll just talk for a moment about the achievement gap. There are many studies that have been out there in terms of, providing more books, more tutoring, more money, things of this sort. But some very seminal studies have been done. And what they have found is that within a high-risk population, the differential between the kids that succeed and the kids who fail is that of self-regulation. And that is so important to know. So let's see this in action.
You know what we did?
What?
We put a ramp in between them. But you know what kept happening?
It was flying.
We put the ramp there, and it fell down to the ground.
Oh no.
And then we put it back up, and it fell down to the ground. Do you know who I saw have this problem yesterday?
Me.
Benjamin had that problem yesterday. How did that make you feel? A little sad, a little angry. Were you frustrated? I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated because it's not working out. We're going to help you with all these feelings. We're going to say, okay, let's take a deep breath. Now we feel a little better. Are we ready to go solve this problem? How do they go down, Lauren?
Gravity.
That's right.
Well, gravity doesn't make it go up.
That's very true. What does make it go up, Libby?
Floating.
Floating can, you're right.
If there is no gravity,
Close.
if there is no gravity, it will stay up forever.
If I'm on a swing over here, what's pushing you down?
Gravity.
And then if you swing through and you're coming up, what's making you go up?
Pumping.
Pumping is what in physics?
Momentum.
That's right. Pumping is momentum. Did you know that, Lucy? When you're pumping out on swings outside, you're using gravity and momentum back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You're making your own momentum by pumping.
Mm-hmm.
But which one's bigger?
That one.
This one?
Yeah.
Which one do you think weighs more?
That one.
Which one do you think is going to go farther?
That one.
Which one?
That one. The big one.
Who thinks the little one?
one.
Who thinks the big one?
Me.
Ooh.
Me. Let's you. Hey,
If ice is slippery, why is it not sliding down? Why is it sliding down so slow?
because it's little.
What's stopping it?
Gravity.
Gravity's making it go down. What's
Friction.
Friction.
Okay, this is a classroom. They started out, older twos, young threes, and then again within 6 months you start. It was a whole lesson on physics, and I just have a quick vignette about this. I was being asked to consult by the Department of Defense for children around 5 years old on creating a physics curriculum. And I said, they showed me the whole storyboard and so forth. And I said, this really, there are better ways of helping children really develop these skills. And I said, let me bring you into a classroom and show you an example. So I brought them into this classroom, and children were talking just like this. And these are these two very large men, and they're watching. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes, they come back to the conference room and they silent. And they said, what are you doing with children? And I just looked and I wasn't sure about what their question was about. And I said, can you expound upon what you're asking? And they said, this is extraordinary. Their attention, their ability to absorb some complex information at such an early age. What is it that you're doing? And so I really launched into what is so important in helping children be able to attend and learn and comprehend. And this is what we saw through our research and our experience and our practice over so many decades. Vignette after vignette after vignette of children really not only being able to learn, but to be able to succeed in learning. So how do we know this works? As I mentioned a moment ago, we have been doing a lot of research on this because lots of people were asking us about it, and they were saying the vignettes are fine, great, beautiful. We want the data. We want the hard facts in terms of what really is happening. So we launched into several scientific research studies that were eventually published and peer-reviewed. So these studies, basically, one of the studies that I'm talking about right now was done again in our lab school. And we saw the benefit of the emotional-based training approach in terms of learning through EXCEL. And again, EXCEL is an acronym for Emotional, Cognitive, and Social Early Learning. And it's an evidence-based program that promotes the building blocks of emotional intelligence from birth and the development of emotional competence, self-regulation, and empathy. And high-level efficacy proven and verified through peer-reviewed research that demonstrated these very powerful results in that less than 1 year for children ages 2 through 6 who participated in the EXCEL program, which is both a prevention and an intervention model. These children significantly outperformed peers nationally in several ways. There was close to a 30% increase in emotion regulation and empathy, and over a 20% decrease in the experience of negative emotions. The EXCEL children also saw significant increases in initiative, in their confidence, in their autonomy, in their risk-taking abilities, and in their self-regulation and empathy. Now, it's important to note one of the measures we used was a measure that is designed to control for developmental change, because most often people will say, well, how do you know it wasn't just because they got older? And therefore, when you get older, you are better able at doing things. Well, we purposely chose this measure because no matter how old you are, the score will never change because of how it's structured unless there is an intervention, an effective intervention, and then the needle will move. And that was the measure, one of the many measures that we used. And additionally, our recent research that was recently published showed that when children really reached, at a young age, and they were really going through this program in terms of starting again with helping them develop emotional competence, also saw a really significant increase in self-regulation and executive function skills, which we saw a significant advancement in their learning compared to the comparison group that on average was about a year younger. A year older. I'm sorry. Our kids were a year younger. The control group was a year older that hadn't participated. And again, for the outcomes, the Excel children significantly outperform these children in self-regulation and executive function skills, attending, comprehending, persisting in the face of frustration, decision-making, and problem-solving. And what these results show is that Excel prevention and intervention relational-based program really works, and the research has proven this, and just how important it is to support children's foundation of emotional intelligence as a solution to what they are experiencing. And we see a critical need right now in particular for these kinds of programs that foster children's development of these very skills that are foundational to coping, to learning, to their academic success, and basically success in life.
One thing to note as well, Donna, is that Excel as the program, it promotes all of these things in children, but the program really focuses again on training the educator and caregiver first. And so the program really incorporates helping educators develop these skills again first, strategies to promote them in children, language, ideas for how to support their emotions and social problems, but also then how to build that bridge between home and school so that there is a consistent approach and language with families. And that's key.
Absolutely. Early childhood educators need to and can be trained to accomplish these powerful outcomes, as Emily was just explaining, using the emotional situation as a wonderful learning and teaching opportunity, helping children really to right then and there on the spot be able to become aware of what they're feeling, to be able to express emotions in constructive ways and better manage the intensity of their emotions, laying the critical foundation of emotional intelligence and children's ability to self-regulate, providing them with a toolkit of skills to carry with them throughout their entire life. By knowing how to effectively deal with and manage emotions, children become more aware of and better able to understand their emotions and behavior and those of others. And through the responsive relationships, we teach children from the beginning that their emotions do not need to overwhelm them. They're part of who we all are, and we can be the boss of our own emotions, no matter how big or small. Helping children to effectively deal with stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and trauma, and accessing the important executive function skills for success in learning, and listen to understand the perspective and experience of others in the development of empathy and the reduction of bullying. We can do our jobs knowing that we're sending children on the right path forward with a strong, positive, and secure sense of self. By supporting children through responsive relationships in developing self-regulation from birth, we're laying the foundation of emotional intelligence that can truly impact a child's trajectory in the development of self-regulation, of emotional intelligence, of empathy. And self-regulation can be a change maker, again, that closes the gaps and opens the doors of opportunity for every child. And it all starts with educators and the key responsive relationships.
Absolutely. And we do have a few minutes for some questions. So if anyone has questions, they can feel free to type them into the Q&A or the chat box. I have about 5 minutes left. And if not, thank you for attending today and for joining us as we had this important conversation. Again, if you and your schools or your coalitions and counties are looking for, solutions to some of the needs and challenges that we discussed today, we would be more than happy to have a follow-up meeting and discuss way that Excel can really benefit your schools and your communities. We really pride ourselves on finding solutions that really fit the individual and community needs, because they're all so different. And that's part of being in early childhood, is being flexible and adjusting. And we know that as former educators ourselves. I'm going to type my email into the chat box. Again, happy to meet or answer any questions. And then Donna, I'll pass it off to you to close it.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. We hope that we're able to address, several of your concerns, and you found it to be helpful. And again, as Emily is pointing out, we're very happy to respond to any inquiries, questions you may have. Email us, and happy to have further conversations with you and how we may be able to be of help to you in the most challenging yet one of the most important jobs there is in helping children to develop such a strong foundation in terms of who they are, their sense of self, and their ability to really succeed, again, emotionally, cognitively, socially, for life. Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you.